Hello there. What better thing to do on a Tuesday afternoon than to talk about my body image? Am I right, y'all? So I would obviously like to preface this video and say that I'm going to be talking a lot about weight, body image, how I feel, what I've maybe done, and negative thoughts around all of these things. So if any of those topics are triggering for you or just kind of hard to deal with, I suggest not watching this video. So if you maybe been following me for a while, a few months ago, wow, it feels like so long ago now, I posted a video called My Body Image and how it got so messed up, I think. You know, if you watch that, if not, I'll just recap it. Basically, to sum it up, I hadn't had bad body image. I had pretty all right body image, I think, for most of my life. And then several years ago, I lost weight, I changed my diet, and because of just who I was around and stuff like that and what I was doing, I kind of got really negative. I had just developed a lot of kind of negative thoughts around my body. And in that video, I was like, okay, this is me owning up to that, because I had kind of claimed that I was body positive, as you'll call it, and I wasn't. And I knew that, and that video was like me owning up to it. Boy, oh boy, how things have changed. Oh God, they got so much worse. They got so much worse since that video. So let's just jump right into what's been happening since I made that video. A lot has happened. A lot has happened in this big old noggin that you see right here. I did okay for a few months after that video. I was all right. I was managing. I was living life. And then for I don't know what reason, I suddenly got even worse with the way I talk about myself and my body and my weight and what I look like in my head. It was like early summer, probably? No, it was not early summer. It was like spring still. It was still spring. It was probably like May, I think. Basically, I wasn't getting more positive. I was just kind of getting more negative because I just didn't realize the depths that I was in like what I was talking about, how I was talking to myself, and all of these bad habits that I had formed. We'll talk about kind of what I did and what I've been doing for years and things I didn't realize were unhealthy habits. This lighting is driving me crazy. I feel like that angle's better. You can see my neck brace and my lamp in the background because it's the best place to put my neck brace, but at this point, it's better if I sit here so that way you don't see the glare on my glasses. I don't know what started it. It just kind of became my go-to negative talk with myself, if you will, where I was so vicious. And I don't know what happened, but basically thoughts that I had got so negative to the point where I was scared that I would develop a full-fledged eating disorder. Yes, you heard me right. It was to the point where every time I ate, I was so disgusted with myself, I wanted to make myself throw up. That's how bad it was, which was weird because those were not thoughts I had had before. And they just came and were really intense, really bad. It was really scary to me because I had never had that before, that inclination, that anything like that, that even thought in my head to do that. That had never been a thing that had crossed my mind. And all of a sudden I was having it every single day of my life. I was to the point where I would just look in the mirror and I would just envision hacking off chunks of my body. That's how bad it was. Anytime I ate anything, especially if I had deemed it a bad food, I would be so upset and I would just spiral. I would be so disgusted with myself. And I realized, like, I'm like, oh, this is bad. I need help. I started backup therapy and somehow I'm still in it. And when I started going, I realized I had had all of these habits that I don't think started off as unhealthy, but then my mind turned them into unhealthy. I had started hiding food. That was one thing I didn't realize I was doing. But if it was deemed a bad food in my mind, if it was deemed a food that was bad, I would hide it because I would feel so much guilt that I was even eating it that I wouldn't want to eat it in front of anybody else. I would not just even hide it in my room, but I would specifically like put it in my closet. And if anybody came in while I was eating it, I would like hide it under the blanket or something. That's a complicated thing about this whole thing is I eat in my room just because I'm in my room all the time. So it's not like, oh, you having food in your room, period. Like, it was specifically how I was going about it, how I was viewing the food and me eating the food and guilt and stuff like that. And then I would also binge food, I think, for sure. If it was a bad food, then I would say, okay, you can buy it, but you have to eat it all right now tonight. Today, you can't have it tomorrow. So you need to eat the bad thing now, and then you need to be done with it and start fresh tomorrow. And I was doing that frequently, and I would eat to the point where I would just feel sick because I was eating a lot of food that I didn't need, that I was just eating because of this weird habit I had gotten into. Once I would eat it, I would feel so guilty, and it was a constant spiral and a constant contributing, like one thing led to another, and it was just thoughts spiraling into me hating myself. So yeah, that's kind of when I realized that it had gotten like bad. The reason I started hiding food was because years ago I used to live with other people, and certain things I wouldn't want to have around everybody just because I wouldn't want everybody else to eat them. So I would just put them in my room. I wasn't hiding them, but I would just have them in my room. So it started off as like a not bad habit. And then slowly over time, it turned into like this shame thing where it was like, okay, I'm going to bring food in my room. I don't want anybody to see me eating, and I'm going to hide it. And I'm not going to eat it in front of anybody. And if anybody comes in and sees me eating it, then I'm going to hide it. And like, it turned into this whole thing that I hadn't even realized that I was at. And it would lead into another. I would eat the food. I would get the food. I would eat the food. And I would feel shame for eating the food. And then I'd hate myself. But because I was like, well, you're already here, you might as well eat the rest of it because you don't want to bring this shame into the next day, all this guilt and shame into the next day. So then it would just lead to me eating things and doing things that didn't make me feel good, and ultimately led to a lot of guilt and shame around certain foods, and it was just really terrible. And I just basically on a regular basis was doing things that were just like not good for me. I'm kind of getting emotional about it. I started going back to therapy, and then I was so overwhelmed for so long because I realized I was doing all of these things. I also was in the habit of I would weigh and measure myself every day, and if it wasn't a number I liked, or if it wasn't a number that I agreed with, then I would lose it. I would be so upset with myself, and then I would compare it with what I had eaten the previous day and been like, this is why you measure more or you weigh more, it's because you ate this. And then because food and body and weight is so inconsistent, sometimes I would eat those foods and then not weigh more, or I would weigh less, and then I would be even more confused and more upset with myself. And then then it would be like confusing. I would still try to find a way to flip it on myself and just like attack myself and just be like, you're still a piece of crap. It had gotten so big and out of control, and something that I didn't even realize was there, of these habits that I've been doing for years now. I would only weigh myself in the morning. Like I would weigh myself, like I have my morning skinny that people call it, and I would only ever weigh myself in the beginning of the day. And then because bodies, this is like normal, I would say go to the doctor, I would go somewhere else, and then I would have to get weighed. I would weigh more because I would have things in my body, because purposely in the morning I weighed myself before I had anything to drink, anything to eat, anything like that, before I'd even gone to the bathroom. Like it was a habit. It was just this whole ugly cycle. I was just constantly feeding into this monster around food and weight and how I viewed those things. And it had such a disconnect in my mind, because it was very confusing, because I didn't even really hated the way I look, believe it or not. I've never really hated the way that I looked per se. It's like a numbers game. It was just like, I have in my head that this is like my normal resting weight. And then if I weighed ever more than that, then I was like terrible. And I labeled myself as like the worst human being ever. I was a piece of garbage. I was trash. You know, it was just toxic. And then it was constantly this game of like, well, you know, why aren't you losing weight? I would eat really, really healthy, really clean, really well, and I still wouldn't lose weight. And I was just so constantly telling myself I wasn't enough, telling myself that whatever I was at any given moment, no matter what I was doing, it wasn't enough. I had guilt and shame, and I was just telling myself ultimately that I was trash, really, all the time. That's what happened. It got a lot worse, and it got a lot darker than I thought it would. I thought like that video would be like the worst point. Also, though, at the same time, all of this was hard because I was navigating all of these weird things and this almost really bad situation as a fat person. And it was just really hard. It felt like at the same time, it was like, well, I'm still fat, so obviously it's not that big of a deal. And I had to realize that at the end of the day, I was still having these negative thoughts that would lead to me harming myself, doing unhealthy things to myself. It doesn't matter if I'm fat or not. So where am I at now? I'm at an interesting spot that I wouldn't have predicted, but here I am. You know, it was very hard for me because when you realize that you're thinking these things, it's difficult. And then I'm also in a weird spot because I do have certain health conditions that lead for me to not be able to just consume all foods and it be okay and for me to feel good. So that was also a hard thing, was for me to be like, I want to do a lot of like the elements of intuitive eating, but I feel like I couldn't do it because I saw all of these people and all of this advice, like, and it wasn't really advice I could follow because at the end of the day, those weren't things that made me feel good. Finally had to come to the conclusion that I need to do what feels good for me, not for somebody else. So if somebody else has issues with eating and they develop weird habits, and for them, eating healthy and eating balanced looks different, then that's okay. Because just for me, overall, as a rule, I have to eat a lower carb lifestyle just to feel good. It's just the way that I eat. It's what I feel good eating. That's what I have to do. I had to kick a lot of those bad habits and behaviors that I was doing, and it was really, really hard. I had to stop having food in my room for a while. I remember distinctly one time, it was so hard. I had to bring the food that I had in my room that I've been hiding down into the kitchen and into the pantry, and people seeing me do that was such a struggle. It's still uncomfortable to think about. Ultimately, I'm better. I've kicked a lot of those habits. I don't do them anymore. I don't weigh myself every day. I don't measure myself every day. I will only kind of weigh myself out of curiosity just to see, like, you know, sometimes I've done it because I'm like, my clothes fit weird. What's going on? And for me, a boundary with weighing myself was like, okay, you can weigh yourself, but you can only do it in like the middle of the day, right at the end of the day, but you can't do it in the morning, because that morning weight was like a toxic thing for me. I had to move the scale out of the bathroom because, you know, even if it would be in the bathroom, that was like too much for me, because I would look at it every single time I go into the bathroom. Every single time I would go into the bathroom, I would look for the scale. I would look to see if it was there, and the temptation to weigh myself would be too much. And for weeks after I moved the scale, I still looked for it. That's when I knew. I was like, wow, this is like really, really bad. Like, this is really a habit that I've developed that is not healthy. Like, the fact that I'm looking for a scale to weigh myself, it sounds ridiculous and it sounds horrendous. Like, when you think about it, it's like, wow, that sounds really awful. Why are you doing that? And I do it, and it's only a way for me to try to talk myself down. I like to think I'm more of an intuitive eater now. I don't know if I follow the guidelines of intuitive eating, but basically I eat what I think will feel good. I don't eat when I don't want to. I don't eat if I'm sad or happy. Every time I go to eat something, I think, how is this going to make me feel? Is it going to make my stomach hurt? And if it's going to make my stomach hurt, am I going to at least enjoy eating it? And if the answer is yes, then I eat it. And if the answer is, I don't know, maybe I don't want to eat it and I don't want my stomach to hurt, then it's like, okay. And I just mean like certain foods just make my stomach hurt, not like from like weird eating habits or binging or anything like that. It's just like doing things like that and just always looking at food now with being like, okay, what are my intentions behind eating this? Am I doing it with the intentions to feel as the best I can, whether it be, I'm eating this food because I know it'll make me feel good, it'll make my insides work well and I just feel like I'm functioning better, or am I eating it because I know I'm gonna really enjoy eating it? And just kind of always looking at food that way. And it's really helped. I can now have things that I have deemed before in the past as bad foods, not feel guilty about it, not want to cry and tear my hair out and just get so sad at eating those things. I don't get that anymore. One thing that is hard, that is weird, and I think it's always going to be there, is the just automatic thought and inclination to do these things and think this way and do these habits is always there. Now, I do eat something, certain foods, sometimes the knee jerk is to be like, why did you eat that? Like, what? Like, are you sure? Like, what are you doing? And, there's just always that inclination. Like, there's still every day the thought of wanting to weigh myself to see how much I weigh, to measure myself, to see what my waist is. Always there every day now. No matter what I eat, no matter what I do, no matter what mood I'm in, they're there every day. And that's weird. It's very weird. Once I noticed that I was doing them and I noticed that they were there, it's crazy that I want to do them all the time still. Like, if I wasn't diligent in it, I would still be doing those things every day. Certain foods I actually can't keep in my room because the inclination to want to hide them will be too much. And I have to eat them in front of other people because I want to hide them and I want to binge them and I want to put all this shame and guilt around certain foods, and I just can't do that. And it's hard. It's hard. It's weird thinking that I'll kind of always be thinking this way. That I'll always want to have the inclination to weigh myself and measure myself and think about my weight all the time. I wish it wasn't this way. I wish more than anything. I think it's always hard to look back at time and realize how good you had it at one point. There was a time in life where I wouldn't eat a food and think automatically like, okay, we should eat this entire thing right now and hide it right now. Like, we should eat this whole thing right now because we don't want anybody to see us eating it tomorrow. Or we don't want to eat this food every single day. We want this to all be gone. I used to just be able to eat what I wanted and not think so far into the future or to think that there is something wrong with me. I used to not put so much weight into weight. It sounds sad, and it is sad sometimes, and there are days when I get tired of it, and I get tired of playing the mental gymnastics of trying to keep myself mentally healthy. Because this is what no one tells you, is that it is work to stay well mentally. It is work every single day. And I was recently talking to my therapist about the reason I'm struggling so much recently is because I feel like there's so many things I have to fight every day. Normal mental illness of anxiety and, there's the depression and fighting those things in of themselves. Those thoughts that come with that, the overthinking and the over-worrying and the sometimes self-loathing and the sometimes lack of emotion and lack of empathy and feeling and trying to juggle that is a job in of itself. But then to add in this, which is an everyday thing now that I have to fight an everyday thing, and every day, it's exhausting. And this is just one element of the things going in my mind. There's so many other things I can't even talk about in my life that require also mental energy, and I am exhausted. It is exhausting being mentally ill. It is a full-time freaking job for me. It is there no matter what I do, no matter where I go, no matter how I feel. I could be in the best mood of my life. I could be doing something I absolutely love, and mental illness will always be there. It is the only constant in my life. She really is reliable. Mental illness, she do be a loyal enemy. I'm not what you would call body positive, because I am not always positive about my body. I don't believe in it. I've realized minds are just wild. They are so big and so vast, and they do things that we can't even comprehend. So I've learned to accept my body in all of what that may include. Sometimes I love the heck out of it. Sometimes I'm wearing high-waisted jeans. I'm wearing light wash high-waisted jeans, and I feel great about it. I feel like a queen. I feel like I could take on the world. And sometimes I could have sworn in my mind that I don't know how I ever looked good in these pants. You know how many times I've worn these pants where I'm like, you don't even look good. Like, why did you buy these? And then other times I'm like, ooh, get it. Just learn to accept the body I'm in, and that this is what I have, and this is what I've been given, and trying to love when I can, and to not pressure myself to love it when I don't want to, because sometimes I don't. Some days I'm thankful that I'm shaped the way I am, which is kind of weird. And then other times I'm not thankful that I'm shaped this way. And I'm like, you know, I would like to be a little bit curvier. I would like to be shaped a little different, but oh well, this is what we got, so we might as well deal with it. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm better. What is the moral of this story? I don't know. I'm just here to tell you about it. Did I learn to love myself, my body more? No. Not really. I've just learned to be okay with what I have, and to try to be as happy with it as I can be, and to know that I am so much more than what I look like. I'm so much more than that. I have so much more to offer people and relationships and in general than what I look like. It's the least interesting thing about me, believe it or not. Once you convince yourself of that, once you try to keep convincing yourself of that, it's a very freeing feeling. It's very freeing. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It's been long and rambly, but I just wanted to give more of my experience. Maybe you'll find it comforting. So let me know if you have any thoughts down below. Come talk to me, and I will see you hopefully in the next video. Bye.